right, there we go. Good morning and welcome finally to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Christa Porter, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly webinar series where we cover a variety of topics that may be of interest to libraries. We broadcast the show live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. But if you're unable to join us on Wednesdays, that's fine. We do record the show as we are doing today, and it will be available for you to watch later at your convenience. And I will show you at the end of today's show where you can access all of our show recordings. Both the live show and the recordings are free and open to anyone to watch. So please share, spread the word about the show if anyone you think might be interested in any of the topics we have on NCompass Live. Here at the Nebraska Library Commission, we provide services to all types of libraries in the state. So there will be shows on NCompass Live for all types of libraries: public, academic, K-12, corrections, museums, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Really, our only criteria is that something to do with libraries. We have a Nebraska Library Commission staff that do presentations for us here about programs and resources and things we're offering through the Library Commission, but we also bring in guest speakers to talk about to the show as well. And that's what we have, kind of a mixture of that today. Today joining me is Scott Childers. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning.
And he is the Executive Director of our Southeast Library System based here in Lincoln. And together, he and I are both, mostly Scott, but a little both, are going to be talking about Nebraska's Open Meetings Act. There are updates that happen to this act regularly. It seems to be the last few years, almost every year, something has changed enough that we've been doing this show annually for at least the past 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I think we're closer to 4 or 5 at this point.
Okay, there's a lot. Okay, so if you're interested, all the old ones are also in our show archives, but they will talk about new things that happened in those years and at those times. But today's will be an overview of the act itself, some of the important things you need to know, and then pointing out to you anything that has changed since the last time we did this. So I will hand it over to you, Scott, to take it away and get us started.
All right, well, thanks. First things first, let me make sure I can advance my slides here. There we go, disclaimer. The presenters are not acting as any of your legal counsel. We are not lawyers, and more importantly, we are not your lawyers. If you are in an actual legal case situation, please get an actual legal professional. Our purpose here today is to educate you that there are certain regulations that library boards have to follow, and to give you enough knowledge to ask further questions if you have them. So with that out of the way, what is it? So the Open Meetings Act is a set of state statutes that require public policy be done in a transparent and public manner. All the states have their own, right? Some have different names. Florida is infamous for having a Sunshine Act. We call ours the Open Meetings Act. There's others like Open Government and so on. For Nebraska, the laws around open meetings are in sections 84-1407 to 84-1414. That is where the laws for this fall. Almost all governmental councils, boards, and other groups must comply with the Open Meetings Act, and that includes governing and advisory library boards. Mm-hmm. If you are funded by the city, county, township, what have you, if your board members are appointed officially or rubber stamped or however that process by the city council or mayor or chair of the board, you have to follow Open Meeting Act. I do want to mention that during this presentation, the term public body will be used to cover all the various councils, boards, and et cetera. They have to follow the Open Meeting Act. So public body is the board. At any time throughout, please feel free to put questions in the question box, and we'll take regular gaps too to catch up on those. Really, one of the reasons we do this live is how we can answer these questions. So let's talk about the meeting. One thing to think about as we go through is The Open Meetings Act is to guarantee the people who live in a community will be able to know what their government is doing. That is the purpose of it. Sure, it feels like a lot of bureaucracy, but in the end result, it's that way people who live there know what the government is doing, planning, etc. And so that way they have a chance to actually give input. So let's keep that in mind as we go through. One of the changes that Christa mentioned happened last year, and it's how the meeting is advertised. And that's it. I put the section number in there so you can check my work. Yeah, you don't have to take my word for it. You can read it in a book, a big blue book that's really thick. Go online. But there are two options for advertising the meeting for all size libraries, and then there's a special option for those under 5,000. And we'll get to that on the next slide. But the two options for all, and it's one of these two: publication in a local newspaper that will be printed before the meeting. That's important. A notice on that newspaper's website, if they have one. The notice posted on a statewide repository for public notices. And I put the URL there. That is the one that is currently active. And that is put together by the Nebraska Press Association. So it's the newspapers themselves own that. It's not a governmental site. So that's one option. You have to use a newspaper somehow in that. Two, and this is for those areas that the newspaper doesn't come out in a timely manner, that we have that situation. But notice is placed on the local newspaper's website, if available, and a notice posted on that statewide repository. Usually, the newspaper website repository, that's going to happen from the newspaper themselves. You have, go in and ask, can you put this on your website? You don't have access to their stuff. And if they are due to negligence or just don't want to do it, you still need to make an attempt to get it into that repository. That said, that repository prides itself on all of these came from newspapers. So I don't know what luck you'll have. I haven't heard anyone having to do this option yet. This, like I said, this kicked in last year.
Right.
They made a couple of small tweaks, but the bulk of it stayed the same. So all of this stuff is the same as that. I do want to go into one more slide, and I'll pause a little bit. For those of you in municipalities under 5,000, you do not have to use a newspaper. If you post a written notice in 3 places in public, so you can't post it like on the bulletin board in your closet that no one has access to and no one dares open because it smells struggling cleaning product. That's no good. People have to be able to see it in regular business, hours. Like when the library is usually open, they should be able to see a posting on the library bulletin board. Same with the city hall. And that location should be the same every time. You could do more. You absolutely could do more. And it doesn't have to be a governmental location. It could be, the cafe. It could be the gas station. It could be the tavern. It could be on the telephone pole that everyone puts their garage sale notices on. Whatever works in your community. But that's the thing for communities under 5,000, because to be honest, there's not a lot of newspaper coverage out there anymore. And most of the newspapers,
and I know we've had people ask about that, saying our newspaper closed down. We don't even have one anymore. Yeah. Sadly.
Yeah. And this is for all the government groups. So not just the library board, but the city council, the village board, the Parks and Rec board, if you have one, if there's a volunteer fire department board or something. This doesn't, I guess I should have said this earlier, this does not mean your friends or foundation have to follow this. Unless,
no, they are not public body.
Yeah. Unless, and I've seen this, the officers are also made up of library board members. And we'll get into that a little later too. So that's that's the minimum amount of coverage. Let's talk about this slide too before I move on. So when do you post it? This is a question, Christa, I'm sure you get it a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
How soon does it have to be posted before? State law does not give us a number of days. It just says reasonable. It's like, okay,
I want hard numbers.
My usual advice is, what is the village board or city council doing? What's their deadline? Is it a week before the meeting, 10 days? But it has to be enough time so that people have a chance to actually see the notice. So usually I advise go with the city, unless you feel they're not doing it right, then 10 days is a good thumbnail, a rule of thumb, 7 days. I wouldn't do much longer than that unless you really feel you need to. What this notice has, time and place of the meeting. Where is it and when is it? Pretty important about the meeting. And then either a copy of the agenda, which we'll talk more about what's in that, or a statement of where the current up-to-date agenda can be viewed in person and where that's kept. And with the newspaper ad thing coming into play now, more and more places are doing this option where they say an up-to-date agenda can be found at City Hall, at the library circ desk, upon request at this place or that place, because newspapers charge for word per character, whatever it may be. And so you don't want to have a full agenda in your notice. If you could just say, go to City Hall, go to the library. And so that's perfectly okay to do that. That's in state statute. The agenda can be changed up to 24 hours before the meeting. So if your board meeting is on 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, that agenda is locked after 7 o'clock on a Monday. All right, no more additions, no more changes. If it's before that, yeah, you can make some additions. Also,
and that's a question. So that 24 hours is in the statutes.
Yes.
That
yes,
cut that particular the latest you can make a change.
Yep. That agenda freezing, it is in state statute.
Okay.
And that also includes time changes, location changes. Sometimes that has to happen. You give as much notice as you can. I've had this happen where the location had to change. You put a sign up where the meeting was supposed to be. You tell people how to get to the new place. Also, just in your minutes, you have to have a location of where and when the notices were placed. So when did you contact the newspaper? When did you put up the signs? What locations did you put up signs? What newspapers did you use, etc. So I think now is a good time to pause for more questions.
Yeah, let's see here. Does anybody have any questions about advertising? Have you had any issues with that? Any questions? I know the advertising has been, I think, a major thing that boards do struggle with. Is your village or city council doing it correctly? Type into the questions section of your GoToWebinar interface, and I'm looking at that here, and I can grab any questions you have. And you can type in whenever you think of them too. You don't have to wait till.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yes, we do. All right. Oh, good, interesting question. And it actually probably is something you are going to be talking partly about later, Scott. So the question is, does the statement that a board may go into a closed session at any time need to be put in the notice? Or is that just because that's part of this Open Meetings Act that's, well, understood? I don't know.
So I guess that could be taken two different ways. One is there's a planned time where they're going into closed session, and we'll talk about closed sessions in a little bit.
Mhm.
There's a planned time that they know that they're going to go into because they know the topic is going to be a private matter. And then there's
Mhm.
the way that was worded, it made it sound like anytime the board wants to do it in the meeting, they can go into a closed session. Um, you do not need to put a disclaimer or anything in those. And hopefully when we talk about closed meetings, it'll show why. But
Mhm.
please feel free to bring that up if after we talked about the closed session process itself, if there's still a question we didn't answer on
Yeah, I'll
that.
keep that question up to remind me about that. Yeah. I mean, if you're planning, like you already know that there's an item on the agenda that will be a closed session because it's like a personnel issue or something that, for whatever reason, that would be on your agenda, that it would say that, right?
Yeah, but you're not under any obligation to advertise it as such.
Yeah.
That might be the question that was being asked. Um, the topic has to be on the agenda, which when we get to agendas we'll talk about, but actually putting on there, this will be a closed session because there's a chance that it won't be.
True.
And so we'll get into that with closed
And-
session and maybe that'll clear some stuff up.
Okay, I'll keep
I
that
hope.
question up and we'll more to come on that. So yeah.
Yeah, that is a really good question. Shall we move on then, or?
Yeah, I don't have anything else right now, but yeah, whenever you all think of anything else you want to ask, go ahead and type it in.
All right. Speaking of agendas, okay. One of the primary things with the agenda, and I don't see, and this isn't just library boards. I've seen some really bad village board ones. First of all, the agenda must have enough detail for the citizen to understand the topics being covered. My example here is an agenda item being listed as getting books doesn't give any information to a non-library board or library staff person. But if you list it as grant proposal to build up the financial literacy collection, that's something that's like, oh, I'm in favor of financial literacy. I like that idea. I'm going to go support that idea. Maybe there's something I can do to help, who knows? But that's the agenda can't be hidden under vagueness. And like I said, I see this a bunch at all levels of agendas.
Mhm.
Um, so there has to be enough that someone can decide if they want to attend, if they want to follow up by reading the minutes of that particular meeting, and so on. Again, these laws are so that way the citizens know what their governmental groups are doing. I will also mention cities of the first class and larger have to place on their websites the agenda of the meeting no later than 24 hours before the start of the meeting. And that agenda must continue to be available for at least 6 months. And that was something that was passed, I think, 2 years ago, fairly recently. I don't, oops, I went all the way back. I'm sorry. Okay. So that's the agenda. I will mention something that I've been asked recently that I thought was a good question. Um, so is there in state statute a list of what happens when in the meeting? Like you do this first and you do this second and you do this third. There is not.
Mhm.
The only thing that really is important at the very beginning is the meeting is called to order, and that's we gavel strikes. We are starting the actual official meeting. We can now conduct business. Right after that, you point out where the Open Meeting Act poster is. We'll talk about that. And then you do a roll call. After that, it's pretty much fair game as far as state statute goes. I do suggest in many cases you have the public comment time next. Get that out of the way, but that is completely up to you and how your board works. But yeah, the agenda, it just, first part, you got to point out the Open Meeting Act, which we'll talk about later, why that's part of it. You got to do a roll call, and you call the meeting actually to order. So we are now in order. We are time to do business. We're not doing business before. We're not doing business at the end. This is the time where our board does the business, and we are signifying that. So, another thing that came up recently, like reports, the librarian report. That does not have to be expanded on because it's just a report from the librarian. It's when the board's doing some sort of business, like they're voting to review, or they're reviewing a policy. So you say what policy you're doing. They're reviewing options for funding. They're receiving a grant or something like that. The librarian report, where you're just reporting, this is what we did over the past month or so. That doesn't need to be built out because you're not asking them to do anything in that time. It's just the librarian giving the report. All the business is handled in business items. So, okay. Right. I'm going to go ahead and roll on to the next couple of them, but please put in questions and we can come back to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question I've had a couple of times. It's an emergency meeting. I do want to stress there is the regular meeting, there's a special meeting, and then an emergency meeting. Regular meeting is we meet every Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Yeah, our first Tuesday of the month at 4 o'clock. That's your regular meeting. Special meeting, okay, we have something, we can't wait till the end of next month, but it's not super time sensitive, or we need a lot of time to focus on this one topic, so we're having a special meeting. Special meeting is still advertised like a regular meeting, and it's only one topic, right? Emergency meeting, you can have a meeting without reasonable public notice, but there's some things you have to do. One, that reason for a meeting must be stated in the minutes. The only business allowed during the meeting must pertain to the emergency matter. Complete minutes of the emergency meeting shall be made available to the public no later than the next business day. And it's still run like an open meeting. So if someone knows there's an emergency meeting and they show up, you still got to let them in. They still have to be in the audience. Emergency meeting does not mean private meeting. Special meeting does not mean private meeting. Regular meeting does not mean private meeting. I think I've beat that horse to the ground now. But I've seen a couple of communities, they actually delay a decision until it has to be an emergency meeting, thinking that they can sneak something through. That's the type of thing that the Attorney General say you are purposely using the rules to avoid the purpose of the law. Mm. And we're going to treat that as something to prosecute. We're going to give you a fine or whatever that is. So manipulating your timing of meetings to try to get around the public knowing about them is also a violation of open meetings law. I had a community that they had to make a decision. They had to make a decision, and they quit. They never had their meeting until the day that the deadline was happening, even though they knew a month ahead of time. I don't know. It happened recently. I don't know if they're going to get dinged or not, but that's not the way it's supposed to happen. So I'll do virtual meetings too. I don't know how many of you do virtual meetings, but it is possible. However, there are conditions. And this law came about shortly after the pandemic ended and people were coming back in. People were asking about doing virtual meetings because during the pandemic, a bunch of the open meeting laws were suspended because we weren't supposed to be in the same room and all that good thing. But now people said, I really enjoyed being able to be part of the board meeting from my couch and having my cat come around and sleep at my feet. Who wouldn't?
Some people had possibly more participation from people who normally would not have, even pre-pandemic, physically come to the meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's getting it out to more of your citizens.
Yeah. So here's the rules now as they stand. Again, this was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 now. The purpose of the meeting, and other groups have more things they can do in virtual meetings for library board level. These are the rules for us. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss items that are scheduled to be discussed or acted upon at a later non-virtual meeting. So you can't vote on anything in a virtual meeting if you're a library board. No action is taken. You are still giving the reasonable publicized notice, including a link or dial-in number to access for the meeting. So like this, you would send out a link to the GoToMeeting or the Zoom meeting and say, yep, you can attend. Also, there is still a physical location where people can come in to attend the meeting that has full access to the virtual meeting, so microphone, speakers, screen where they're seeing everyone else, and at least one member of the public body is in attendance at that physical location.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to go through all of that for a meeting that you can't vote in, just to talk about stuff. But you can do it if you wanted to. I'm sure there's a use case for that. But the fact that you can't vote on anything usually is the deal breaker for some folks.
Yeah. So we do have a question. What exactly is, what constitutes a, I don't know if the word is that, what is the definition of virtual meeting? Like, when does it become a virtual meeting as opposed to just a meeting that is broadcast somewhere? Someone's asking, because many, and I've seen this too, where many communities will have their board meeting, but it will be live streamed somewhere. All the board members are together, but the meeting itself is live streamed. Is that a virtual meeting, or is that just live streaming your meeting and give are there levels too? Like, we're just live streaming it, no interaction from virtual?
Yeah, that is a good question, and this is still kind of new, so there's probably going to see more tweaks and stuff later on as more people try to use virtual meetings. But yeah, what's the point that it becomes a virtual meeting as opposed to a real meeting that's just broadcast? Recent interpretations that I've been gathering from like county attorney groups and stuff, if the board members are dialing in, it's a virtual meeting. Any number is what some of them are interpreting it at. So you have 4 in person and 1 coming in virtually from their winter vacation. That's, for that group of people, they are seeing that as a virtual meeting because it's the board members and there's a virtual presence amongst the board.
One of them is coming in virtual. Okay.
I've seen, nope, that is fine because there's still a quorum physical. And then we just mark that board member as abstaining every vote because there's still a quorum personal. I've seen that interpreted. So this is one of those things that if you want to go forward with this, you're going to want to talk with your local city, county attorney. What's their interpretation? Because like I said, I've seen different ones. We don't have a court case to kind of settle this yet. And I don't see the legislature coming in to kind of quantify it with number of board members. So that's a really good question that there are going to be different answers depending who you ask, unfortunately, because
at the moment, yeah, until, like you said, someone brings it up at someone brings it to their legislator and says, we need to make another tweak to the Open Meetings Act because nobody has a consensus on what the definition is. So somebody put it in the law.
And I imagine over the next couple of years, more lawyers are going to talk to each other, more city boards are going to talk to each other and kind of work this out as far as what is practice. I don't know if we'll see legislation happen, but I imagine practice will evolve, or there will be a court case where someone got angry and sued the city.
Yes.
Because that's how a lot of changes happen with interpretation of Open Meeting Act.
Yeah. And it's your and it's as far as you as a library board, it's your choice to decide how do you want to go with it. Do you want to be more safe, don't rock the boat and just say virtual is virtual because anyone is, no votes, or we're only going to be broadcasting, everyone has to be in the room? Or are you going to try and push the envelope and make it they make them make a decision by holding your meetings, and one board member is remote because of just whatever reason they need to be. There's various reasons, health reasons, personal reasons. They're out of the city at the moment, but they want to participate. And you hold your meetings with that one person there and have them vote. And that's the way to push the issue too. Do it and see what happens. So your board has to decide which side they want to be on. You want to push it and make somebody nail this down, or do you want to just play it safe and not mess with it?
Yeah. At least we have something, because before the pandemic, virtual meetings were not allowed except for statewide groups, is my understanding. So this will eventually give us the ability, just like, hey, our city board member broke an ankle yesterday, and there's stairs to get into the boardroom, but we still want them to be part of the meeting and involved and vote. So I think we'll start seeing accessibility comments tweak this as well.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Good question.
Yeah. Anything else with virtual before I start rattling on?
Nope. Nope, nothing new. All right. Type in anything as you think of it. Yeah, don't forget.
Actually, that question led to this next slide, because the public has the right to attend, to record, to broadcast, to make notes and make comments during a meeting. So anyone can come in with their cell phone and hold it up and broadcast the city council meeting. It's the public's right. They can record it for their own personal use. It's their right to do so. No one can tell you can make, I had someone where the village board was telling them that anyone who took notes had to turn them in at the end, like it was homework. Like, no, those are your notes. You take them with. You're the public. It is your right to see how our government is working. Also, a new change, and if you've listened to one of our older updates, this goes against what we said it does. So the public shall always have an opportunity to speak at every meeting of a public body. That was new as of last summer. It used to be that the board could say, we're not taking public comment today. We'll take it next meeting. Today, we're on reading 2 of 3 readings of something. And so you had your opportunity last month, you'll have an opportunity next month, but we're not taking comment this month. You can't do that anymore. You have to have some opportunity for the public to talk. You can set rules on that. You can set time limits on how long a person can make a comment. And you can restrict the location of any recording devices so they do not get in the way of other attendees' abilities to see, listen, and record. Setting a time limit for public comments is good policy. And I mean that as an actual policy document for board meetings. You say our public comment time will be 3 minutes per comment. And just have that be a standard number. A few years ago, when there were a lot of people going to school boards and state of education boards, they would decide how long people had to comment when they saw the crowds. And then some people were taking that as they're discriminating against our viewpoint, because last meeting it was 5 and this meeting it's 3, just because we're the ones here, right? So having a regular time limit set in a policy document somewhere, and this is coming from the school board, some of the school board trainers who talk about this, just make it a policy. Every public comment is 3 minutes. Cut and dried, doesn't care what you're talking about, who you are, what month it is for the meeting. Public comment time is 3 minutes per individual. Makes it easy to be fair and balanced for everyone who wants it. So continuing on with the public's rights, because I'm mentioning it, that's because I've seen it. The public body cannot require the public to identify themselves to simply attend the meeting. Anyone can walk into the city council meeting. Anyone can walk into the library board meeting. It's an open meeting. They also cannot require the individual to be on the agenda prior to the meeting to make a comment on something on the agenda. Okay, this got a little convoluted in the writing of it, but there have been cases where someone wanted to come in to talk about something that the board was going to discuss later on in the meeting. And when they started talking about it, they said, no, that's on the agenda. It's not available for public comment, which is completely wrong because public comment can be about anything, including what's on later in the day in that agenda. You absolutely cannot say, we're talking about that later, so you can't talk about it now. That's completely wrong. Now, they can't require someone making a public comment to disclose name and address because it is a public comment. Cuts both ways. So, see, what are there questions about this public comment? Because I've had a bunch in the past. And Christa, definitely, you guys have probably dealt with public comments more than you have recently. If you've got any experience to share, that would be a great time.
Yes, we've had questions about, how do we, what can we do? I mean, the ultimate question is really, what can we do to control what and when they can talk? What can the public can say? And you can't. You have to let them talk. You can though have requirements for, and what, because they do have people that just come in and take over and just go on and on and on. And you can have,
Hello?
You can control it as far as having regulations about, like what you said, Scott, each person has this amount of time to speak, or you must only talk about things that are on this meeting's agenda. You can't come in and talk, you've got the agenda, you know what we're discussing today. You can't just come in and complain about something you're upset about if it's not already on our agenda. That, look, ask for us to put that on a future agenda or something, or come to a meeting when we are discussing that issue. You can't just come in and start randomly, complaining about anything you're upset about in general. So there are some things that you can do, and that's the kind of questions I've had. Yeah.
It brings up a good point. When was it? A couple of years ago, there was some viral thing that went when someone went to the Lincoln City Council, and his public comment was talking about how boneless buffalo wings are really just spicy chicken nuggets.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
It absolutely had the right to do that. And he made it under the time limit, so good for him. I don't know if it's part of a viral commercial for a wings place or not, but yeah, the public comment is public comment. And another thing to think about, it's public comment, not public debate, not public demand. Whatever they say, the board is just noting it. And it's like, that's not the time to debate. That's not time for Q&A. They are there to speak their mind, and the board is supposed to take that in and possibly use that in a future meeting, or look at future agenda items, or go back to that person afterwards, not start a debate, not bring up business to be voted on, definitely not. It is really a one-way. It's not a conversation. It is public comment. You are reading the comments someone dropped in the comment box at this point. Only they're standing there reading it to you. That's the best way to handle that too, because otherwise it's so easy to get sidetracked, and it becomes a debate and becomes heated. So that's one thing to remember about this comment time.
Someone does have a question. Is the public restricted to only speaking during the public comment period of the agenda? So can
Yes.
they, like, they only can speak their mind then, so then when it does get into the actual agenda and you get to that agenda item, an hour later, when the thing that they were talking about, can anyone in the public stand up and start talking at the board about that item now when it comes up on the agenda?
As best as I've seen, their interpretations are, yes, you can say public comment is for any and all. So if you have things coming up for are the agenda items, speak about them now, and they'll be fresh in our minds when we talk about it later. There have been a couple times where the board has opened up a specific public comment time about an agenda item with that agenda. Like they know something is going to have a lot of comments, and so the public comment time earlier say anything other than this agenda item we'll do now, and things with this agenda item we'll do with that agenda item.
Oh, okay. So you could have multiple public comment sections on your agenda. Public comment times.
Yeah, and as far as I've seen, that is still okay, because there's still a time for people to talk about stuff that's not on the agenda. And you're promising that, okay, and those who do want to talk about this, we will talk about it, but we're going to keep it all in the same time frame, so we're all like on the same page with this. Or you could say all of the public comment for tonight will be first thing before we talk about agenda items. So we'll see. Now that it's mandatory, we'll see if there are more wrinkles that come out. But as far as I understand it, as far as I've seen, you could do topic specific public comment if you want within the agenda items. You just still need to have a place where someone can talk about if boneless wings are really spicy chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
All righty.
We do have another question that just popped up.
Yeah.
Also. Are public comments reported in the minutes of the meeting? So is your secretary or whoever's taking your minutes supposed to try and take down accurately, I suppose, everything people say in the comments?
That's one that I don't have a hard and fast set of interpretations to fall back on. Especially, depending on what the comments are, some of them may or may not ever apply to things. I've seen some where public comment is just like public comment was had, and then there's others that they did a really brief sentence about what the comment was. That's probably your best bet. It doesn't have to be big and huge, again, because it's not a binding type of thing. It's not a demand that has to be followed up on. It's not
right.
It's not a debate.
It's not the business it's not the business that was being done by the board that you have to document. So someone, 10 years from now can say, oh yes, they actually did this at that meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
If someone did have public comment, you definitely want to put it in the meeting. I think you do want to put it in the minutes that yes, there was public and comments were made. Up to you how detailed you feel you need to report it. There's nothing that tells you how detailed it has to be included.
Yeah, I think a simple sentence summary. I think in cases where there were a lot of comments about a particular agenda item, I think they just did like the unicameral does with their hearings. We had 57, well, not 50, we had 5 in favor, 3 against, and 2 with just information. If you got a topic that really does bring out stuff. I was at a village board meeting where 10% of the population gave public comment. That was a long meeting.
Wow, that's a lot.
All of them talked about the library. A few of them talked about water. This was this was up near where the Alt-N water contamination thing was happening.
Oh, right.
Before it came out. And now looking back, I go, that's why they were complaining about the water, because it was nasty. That's why it was nasty. So, all right.
Let's go.
All right, all good?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
More on the public's right. The current copy of the Open Meeting Act must be posted in the same room as the meeting is being held, and its location is pointed out at the start of the meeting. Why is this? Okay. Not everyone has a phone, to look up the act. Not everyone knows where to look to get our act. They might get Missouri's, they might get Florida's. Our act is available if you just turn around and look at this wall. It's pointed out there. This is actually where, Christa, you said you had some people get new copies of the act. I got some questions like,
Yep, I was actually
like
Open Meetings Act posters. Yes.
Yeah.
Open Meetings Act. These are produced by the League of Nebraska Municipalities. And I've got posters that they sent us last year. I still have some here. And I have reached out to them to ask if there's going to be new ones again. Some of you libraries may know we did a big push a couple of years ago where we delivered them to every single library in the state. And then last year we started doing that again and found out that some places already had them. Their city had already gotten them, or they got them from elsewhere. So we were doing it more of a, if you need one, let me know, we'll send it out to you kind of situation. And I still do have some. These are the ones from last year. So they have all of the 2024 changes are in these. If there are changes this year that entail needing a new poster, we will work on getting those. I've sent an email to the league asking if they're going to be putting out new posters. I just haven't heard back yet, so I'm looking into that.
Yeah, and pretty much the changes that happened this year were all structural. We didn't add or remove any new requirements,
right?
Or remove requirements, thankfully.
Well, I was wondering because there was the section, and I was just looking at it here on about how the publishing in the newspaper thing, how you promote it, that there was a until January, because this was in 2024, the changes are going into effect as of January 1st, 2025. So, and it does say on the actual act and in the poster, until January 1st, 2025, do it this way. And then over here it says beginning January 1st, 2025, do it this way. So I'm wondering if they're going to do a new poster that doesn't talk about the before 2025, January 25, because it's now past that. Yeah. But I've asked and we'll find out. If there is new posters, we'll look into getting more of them for libraries. If not, we've got them here and we can send them out to anybody who might need one. Some libraries got them from their own city, I found out too, actually. Somehow the league or someone sent their city or your village multiple copies, and they made sure that anywhere we hold a meeting, let's get a poster up. And so I was reaching out to libraries saying, hey, we've got their poster, and like, oh, we already got one. So.
Yeah. So.
Look for more info from me on that as soon as I hear back from the league.
Cool. So yeah, with posters too, we used to actually give advice that print out a copy of the act and put it in a binder.
Yeah, you can do that too.
A court case a few years ago said that might not actually be good enough. It needs to be kind of a semi-permanent thing where it can't just walk out of the room easily. So you can put it in a binder, but that binder, like maybe you attach it to one of those chains banks put their pens on. I don't know if they still do that or not. But, or even if you printed out the current act and slapped it on a piece of poster board while you're waiting for a new poster, that would work too. But you definitely cannot just have a loose copy on a table in the room. That won't fly. Also, you can't have it behind the board members because it's for the public to get up and review anytime they want to during that meeting. That is why it's there. So it can't be easily removed from the room, and it has to be somewhere where the audience can get to it and actually read it. So, all right.
I will mention, since we just did a little after 11 o'clock Central Time here, we will be running officially longer than our normal designated time because we had technical difficulties this morning with the GoToWebinar and we started late. But we will go as long as it takes to get through everything Scott has to talk about today, all of his slides, and any questions you all have. So if you're good to stick around with us for the whole time, please do. If you must go because you only allotted through 11 o'clock, no problem. We're recording the whole show today, and you can come back and watch it later at your convenience.
All right. Yeah, so we've talked about advertising, we've talked about room decoration with posters. Let's talk about minutes that happen during the meeting. Minutes include the time and place of the meeting, the members present and absence, and the substance of all matters discussed. So someone should be able to read the minutes and have a pretty good idea of what was discussed and what led decisions to be made the way they were, right? It can't just be this was the vote, and such and such. There has to be some of the dialogue captured. It doesn't have to be transcribed, but there has to be enough to see, like, some people took this stance, some people took this stance, this information was brought forward, something like that. Um, so that's important in your minutes. Any vote has to be recorded and done by a roll call vote, where each member's vote is recorded in the minutes. So yeah, it's like you could run down the name of the board members present. It's like Bob, aye. Cindy, aye. Joe, nay. Joe's always a negative guy. But it's reported like that too. Now for library boards, it's usually unanimous. You still got to go through this. It's that way the people outside of that room can know how their representatives are representing them. It's more important, of course, with the village board and city council boards usually, but it's still, we fall under the same thing with our library boards. Minutes and all documentation received or disclosed will be available for public within 10 days of the meeting. So that's important. It's not we wait till the draft has been approved at the next meeting. What was recorded is put forward. Plus all documentation received and disclosed in that meeting. So if someone has a handout, everyone in that room should be able to have access to it during the meeting. And then there's a copy attached to the minutes. I do know there's some city attorneys who say, nope, that's not necessary. And I see others like, yes, absolutely. And I've seen some like, just copy and paste whatever was in that flyer into your minutes. It's like, okay, that's a lot more work. But as far the majority interpretation I've seen is if you have a handout, it gets attached to the minutes and kept and available to the public. Mm-hmm. Okay. Cities of the first class, so that's 5,000 or larger, shall place on their websites the minutes of the meeting no later than 10 working days. And those minutes shall also remain on the website for at least 6 months. If you're smaller than that, you do not have to do this. There was a village of big 1,200 that the city was like, how are we going to do this? Put this on our website. It's like, no, you don't have to. It's only the larger ones that they're expected to do this. If you want to do that, great, fabulous. But you don't have to, unless you're of that cities of the first class. So, oops. I'm losing track of, there we go. Man, we hit 11 and then all my slides decided to just do some things. Before I get to close, any questions with minutes? I know we sometimes have a bunch of minutes questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions about minutes, go ahead and ask. I do have a different question that came up because someone said they haven't been able to have to pop in and out of our session today. Okay. And wants to know, how does all of this, I guess all open means, how does this, and I think you did mention this at the very beginning, how does this apply to advisory boards versus governing boards?
All the same rules apply to advisory.
Right. There are no, yep. Whether you are governing or advisory, all of the rules apply because you are a public body.
Yeah. The places where it won't apply, and this is very, very few, but let's say you get nothing from the city, township, or county. Your board members are not approved or rubber stamped or go through any process through the city, township, or county. You're completely volunteer, no funds, no help from any governmental entity like that. In that case, you can skip all of this. But if there's any type of governmental funding, governmental support,
Mhm.
you've got to follow this.
Yeah.
So, and whether you are governing or advisory, it's still an open meeting. That's a good question though, because advisory, you have all of the responsibilities of holding this, but you just send in, we vote to advise the city council on this. I can understand where it's like, do you really have to? But you do.
You're a public body. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Same with advisory group, like the Parks and Rec Board. I know it's sometimes advisory in some places. Sometimes it has some power in other groups. They still have to have their meetings done in public. Good question.
Don't see any other questions about minutes, so let's go on.
Okay.
Go ahead, and if you do think of anything later, just type in at any time about anything we've talked about.
Okay. Closed sessions. We had a question earlier about closed sessions. First thing to know, there are only certain things that you can go into closed session for. You can't just willy-nilly close the session. One is strategy sessions in respect to things like collective bargaining, real estate, litigation, things that if that information is out in the public, you're actually causing taxpayer harm, because you're talking about, well, we'll look at this real estate, but we won't pay more than this. Well, if that goes out in public, the person selling it is just going to say it's this or nothing, right? Litigation, you don't put all your cards on the table until you get to the court case. So that way, that's just bad litigating. All of that stuff. You need to have a closed session for that type of things. Discussion about security, personnel, and devices. If you talk about where you're posting guards, you might as well not bother with guards, because now it's like, okay, we just need to know, we skip that point and that point. Same with camera footage and all of that. So that needs to be done in a closed session. If you're investigating allegations of criminal misconduct, okay, yep. Again, that goes with the litigating. It's like, if people know that they're being investigated, sometimes they'll run out of town. Hopefully the library board is not doing investigative proceedings regarding allegations of criminal misconduct. Just saying, if you were, you have that option. And then evaluations of job performance of a person when necessary to prevent needless injury to the reputation of that person, and if that person has not requested a public meeting. So that employee could say, nope, this is going to be done out in the public. I want all of these people to hear what you have to say about me. There have been some cases where that worked tremendously in a librarian's favor, because there was very vocal people on the village board that just didn't like libraries, let alone librarians. But by having it done in public meant that the library supporters got to see how the village board saw the library, how certain village board members supported the library, and how others just spoke untruths about the librarian. This was before all of this craziness that we're going through now. This was more of a personal vendetta type of thing. But it worked in the librarian's favor to have that session in public. Now, if they go into closed session for anything other than these, they're probably doing it illegally. You don't go into closed sessions willy-nilly, especially for library boards. Other types of boards can do it, not library boards. So if they are, so we're going to go into closed session for this, and why? It's not one of these four things. They can't. So more about closed sessions. To go into closed session, you have to state the reason for going into that closed session in the open meeting. So you don't start a meeting in closed session. You do not have a completely private meeting. Even if it's a special meeting that's going to be closed, you still open it up like you had an open meeting. And then state the reason for it, and it goes to a vote. So the people on the board vote if we really need to go into closed session. So there could be a topic, someone says, we're going into closed session, and the board says, no, we're going to talk about this in public. because we feel the public needs to know these details. They absolutely can do that. So that one question near the beginning about advertising that something's going to be closed, it's not guaranteed because they don't decide that until the actual meeting date officially.
Mm-hmm.
They may have it in their heads. Yeah, we need to go to closed meeting for this, but there has to be a vote taken. There has to be a reason given to the public why they are retreating from public view for a moment. Okay. The only matter discussed in the closed meeting is that one matter stated, why they're going into. They can't have a whole meeting of things in there, just the one topic. Another thing that's important, any vote on the matter must happen after the closed session is finished and the public is back in to view it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is recorded just like all the other votes. Roll call, aye, nay, etc. Okay. There are no votes taken in closed sessions that count. Now, I've heard people do straw polling, okay, but those aren't binding. They have to do a public vote. So a library board cannot have a completely closed meeting. At least the very beginning and the very end have to be done in public. Someone was telling me about how they had a library board that opened, went to closed session, and then never came back. So people weren't sure if the meeting was over or not. Just kind of like, okay, meeting's done. And it's like, well, you never went back to open meeting. There wasn't there wasn't a vote for anything, or it's just like done, gone by everybody. That's not useful for the general public. So, so yeah, that question we had earlier, do you advertise it? I say no, because of this. It's not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be. And in some cases, it can be blocked, especially if it's about individuals. I also want to mention, we talked about protecting the reputation of an individual. That board, city library board, cannot go into closed session to protect the reputation of a board member. Anything discussing the reputation of a board member at that board has to be public. You cannot protect the reputation of that board member in a closed session. And that is in state statute too. So you're only protecting the reputations of others, not yourselves, when you're in that board. So
I'm so glad some of these things are in statutes. It makes things so much easier for the things that are there.
Yeah, and over the past few years, as we've done these, and more librarians are learning these things, it's become very useful. They've protected themselves as librarians. They've helped get things for the library because they know the rules of the game, and not to sound manipulative or anything, but they know where they need to be, when makes the best impact to do things with meetings. Getting in the flow of where the village board meetings are and how things work, and say, you know, if they threaten, well, we're going to put this in closed, say, oh, well, no, you can't. This type of thing doesn't fall in a closed session. So you have to be here in front of all of these library supporters that happen to be here. And you have to tell us why you're telling us no. So, okay, we're getting to the very end. I do want to talk about social events, because I know I grew up in a village of 350 people, and the same people on the school board were also on the church board and the Legion, and you know, they all had kids about the same age, so they were all in the stands for all the sporting events. It's okay. There's a statement in state law. The act does not apply to chance meetings or attendance at travel or conventions or workshops where there's no meeting of the body then intentionally convened. There's no vote. There's no action taken over matters that you have control over. So yes, y'all can go to the sporting event and sit on the same bleacher. You really can. It's allowed. Okay. You can go, you know, it's fine. Just make sure that you're not talking about library business. And if you're a sporting event, why are you talking about library business? You know, talk about your kids.
Yeah.
That said, I do know there are some places where yeah, it's not illegal, but it looks bad. And you know who we have living in our community who will make a ruckus, right? Some communities have those folks that it's not worth the trouble giving that person, that group of people, ammunition to make a ruckus over nothing. That's your community. You know better than I do if that's an issue or not. But no, you can all go to the same social events. You can all of that fun stuff. Have at it. So, yeah, let's run through consequences real quick. And I think I'm done with that. So, this is rules that do have some bite. The Attorney General and County Attorney are the people who enforce the Open Meeting Act. So if you think someone has violated it, you report it to your County Attorney or Attorney General of the state. The reason why there are some city attorneys who are also county attorneys, and in a case like this, they will be defending the city. So you can't report to the county attorney because they'll also be the defense. You would report to the Attorney General.
Bump it up farther, yeah.
Yep. Any meeting held as found to have violated the act can see any and all decisions made in that meeting voided. So let's say someone violates this and fires someone. Yeah, we can say, no, you violated the act, and on a technicality, that person has their job back. Also, and I'm not going to read the whole quote, but people who, members of that public body could face personal punishments by fines and or jail time. Jail time is reserved for the most egregious, those that do a lot of, do this a lot. Normally it would be a fine at least, maybe probation, but still there will be like a $500 fine, or you can just run the meeting like it's supposed to and not have to pay $500. Your choice. So there are consequences.
And someone actually asked, who can report these violations to the either city attorney or attorney general? Just anybody?
Well, anyone who witnessed that act. It can be an audience member. It could be another board member. It could be an employee who happened to be there at the same time. Going third hand usually does not work. No. Like if someone told me, hey, they did this, I can't report that they violated it because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I can tell that person, you can report it if you want, because you were there. But yeah, anyone can do that. And in fact, if someone knowingly goes along with this, like a meeting that has violated these acts, even though they're not like the chair, but they don't report it, they might be found liable as well. So that's a good thing to think about if someone on the board,
aware of what the Open Meetings Act is and what you need to do, and just not have to, then you don't have to worry about it.
So yeah, if you have a board member saying, well, it doesn't matter, nothing could happen to us, that other board members say, you're going to get all of us in trouble and have fines. And all of our decisions today may go away.
The classic, we're too small a community for this to apply to us.
Yeah, wrong.
Stop with that delusion. Oh, I've heard that so many times over my career here, and it just blows my mind. There's no such thing as being too small a community for the laws to not apply to you. That's not a thing. There are certain, things you do, like we have the city of first class, and not, those specific things that mention that. But no, you're not too small to have the law apply.
And honestly, I've seen more headlines about the state auditor reporting on small town violations of things.
Yeah.
Like 8 small towns over the last year, 13 the year before. It's not about Open Meeting Act for the auditor, it's about their financials and their practices. But they're definitely looking at small towns.
Yeah.
And it's not like, well, they won't notice us. Like, no, you're prime targets because Omaha and Lincoln have big legal teams and people whose job it is to make
on the straight and narrow. Yeah.
Yeah, they have people whose job it is to make sure everything's followed. they're not easy targets. It has to be big if Omaha or Lincoln or even a bunch of the those other, the Sewards, the Yorks, the Grand Islands, the Scotts Bluffs. So something to think about. I do want to mention something. We do have these references. The website for the legislature has not been updated with this updated rule set. It just kicked in May 31st. And here we are less than 30 days from there. So of course they've got to go through all of the legislature to make all the changes on the official website. So give it a little bit of time, but these are links to where it will be once it's updated. Then you can peruse it. I checked this morning. It's still not updated. So
Still not updated, yeah.
So yeah, questions?
All right, yeah. Anybody have any other questions that you haven't asked yet? Anything that we okay. I just seen if I had an email yet from the league about posters, but nope. Okay. Any questions about anything we've mentioned? Anything you need clarification on? Anything that did not get mentioned that you were wondering about the Open Meetings Act? Anything that's been happening at with your library boards or your village boards that you want to know more about? Type into that question section. I had some great questions throughout. That's good. While I'm waiting to see if that comes up, Scott's slides will be available with the show recording. So you didn't have to worry about, probably should mention at the beginning, but I usually say, don't have to worry about scribbling everything down. Everything will be available. I already have them from him. So when I post the recording of today's show, the slides will be available too. Those should be available both by the end of the day tomorrow at the very latest. I just have to go to webinars, got to process it. Our Library Commission's YouTube channel has to upload it, and then I will be able to push that out to everybody.
While we're waiting for questions, I also want to point out, here's my contact information. But if you have other questions, feel free to, Christa is always a good contact for any of this. Also the other system directors. So Western, give Ethan a call, Central Plains, give Denise a call, Three Rivers, give Tammy a call. Feel free to contact any of the regional library systems. Christa is a great resource too. And plus she has the weight of a state agency behind her.
Yes.
So sometimes it's like, Christa, you need to talk to them because they're not listening to me.
I am happy to do that. Yes. I've sent so many emails, and I hope some people may be a little overwhelmed. I do a lot of, well, I'm a librarian by trade, of course. I cite my sources. You will get an email from me that doesn't just say, yeah, you have to follow the law. It says this. I will say, and here is the specific statute. Here's a link to it on the Nebraska legislature website. Because we have had people even comment about our systems and about us. And who are you to tell me what to do? You're just trying to make up rules and regulations that I have to follow. Why should I listen to you? It's not me, it's the state law. And here is the actual statute on the legislature website that you can read yourself. I am just pointing you in that right direction.
That's why in a lot of these sections you saw a reference number. So 84 - whatever. So you can do the same thing when you're bringing it up forward. It's like, how does this apply to us? And force them to look at it. And yeah, that is a great thing to do. It's very satisfying when you can librarian your way into it that way. It's like, well, here's a reference for you to peruse.
Yeah. It's not just my own opinion, it's the law.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see any other questions coming in while we've been chatting, so I think we will wrap things up. Just got some thank yous coming in. Thank you, Scott and Christa. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And yeah, it's just, this is an important thing for us to know. And so I'm glad that we can get the word out.
And like I said, we do this regularly whenever there's been updates, and pretty much every year there's going to be a new one. And even if there isn't, we may just do, well, we'll talk about that. will be refreshers of this. This is something that is just we've got new library. I know we have a lot of new library directors with us today to asking questions. There's always going to be new staff, new directors that need to know, or your board members can also attend these sessions or go to webinar, our NCompass Lives as well. These are free to open to anyone. So send them to this. Use the recording of this for your library board to earn CE. Your boards, if your library boards are wanting to be certified, they could watch this session and each person can earn an hour of continuing education credit for learning about how they are supposed to be working within the Open Meetings Act. And we do have a thank you. This was great information. Thank you. You're welcome. So as I said, the show's been recorded. I'm going to go to our main NCompass Live page. If you use whatever is your search engine of choice, you will find NCompass Live. Search for that online. These are our upcoming shows, and then right beneath them is a link to our archives. Most recent show at the top of the page here. So today's will be there. The link to the recording on our YouTube channel and the slides. Everyone who attended today's show and registered for today's show will get an email from me letting you know as soon as that's all available. We also push it out to our social media. We have a Facebook page specifically for NCompass Live. So if you'd like to use Facebook, give us a like. We post reminders. Here's a reminder to log into today's show, announcing when the shows are up and then when the recordings are available. So do give us a like over there if you want to. We use the abbreviated hashtag NCompLive for the name of our show. And we post it here. And also the Library Commission has a Instagram, and they're still on Twitter as well, that we sometimes put things out there. So anywhere there you can find more information. You can search our show archives to see if we've done a topic on any show you might be of interest. You can search the full archives or just most recent 12 months if you just want something very current. When you are watching any of our recordings, I'm going to scroll down. You can see this is a huge page. I'm not going to go all the way down. This goes back to when NCompass Live first premiered, which was in January 2009. So just pay attention to the original broadcast date of anything that you do watch. Some things will be good to watch, stand the test of time, still be good, useful information, but some things will become old and outdated. Links may be broken, resources may have changed drastically or no longer exist anymore. People may work at different places than when they presented for us. Just pay attention. But this is something libraries do. We keep things for historical purposes, and as long as we have a place to host them, which right now is the Library Commission's YouTube channel, we will always keep all of our show archives there for you to watch. All right, so that wraps it up for today's show. Thank you, Scott, for being here with me today and for talking to us all about this. Very important information. I'm glad we got it out to everyone.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So here's our upcoming shows. Keep an eye for more dates being filled in. But next week, we'll be talking about creative aging outreach opportunities for libraries. This is something that we've had on a few times. The Nebraska Arts Council does programming for people, seniors like 50, 55 or older adults, we'll call them. And they have some new funding available, grants specifically for libraries to have artist-led workshops held at their libraries. So join us next week to learn all about that and how your library can apply for some of this funding to have this programming brought to your citizens. All right, that wraps it up for today. Thank you all, everyone. Sorry about the technical issues at the beginning. It happens. And hopefully we'll see you all on a future episode of NCompass Live. Bye-bye.